Hello brothers and sisters, welcome to my channel. If you're new, please don't forget to subscribe. This is Uncle Lenny. As usual, I'm out again. Today, it's another day that Uncle Lenny has to be out. And today, guys, I'm gonna do something different. And today, I'm following up a lecturing at the University of Pittsburgh. So the topic for this evening is pre-colonial Africa traditions and exploration of African indigenous knowledge. In short, I'm gonna take it up very slowly, just in case, before our colonizers get to Africa, there were kings and kingdoms. There were rules that were governing those kingdoms. And today we are being governed by the modern society. So we want to make sure that there's some research that is being done to dig deeper about how our kings and rulers were being governed. Today that's a topic, guys. So stay tuned because I'm gonna take you behind the scene and show you exactly what is going on and what are the professors are saying about our indigenous research. There are people that are doing the research about how our people were living before pre-colonial. That's a reason why if we're going to talk about colonialism, we have to go to the roots, to the bottom to it before we're going to talk about today. So today, guys, this is the video for today. Make sure you follow it up, you share it up, and make sure that you talk to your friends. Share it. Let's make sure that our friends have enough information about what is going on to then and what is going on today. Guys, stay tuned because I'm going to take you behind and show you how this topic is going to go down to.
General Secretary for the African Graduate Student Union, and I'm pleased and humbled to welcome everyone to this event. The main purpose of this event is to basically reclaim epistemic sovereignty. So the world has represented and described our continent, or the continent of Africa itself, which many of us come from or study, as a place that is ahistorical, or a place that is primitive, a lot of negative adjectives. And what we are trying to do is to reclaim sovereignty. What it means is to redescribe, relearn what we know or what we want to know about Africa. And that is why we are here with a very distinguished scholar in the field who would help us in relearning about our continent. Many of us know about colonial Africa, post-colonial Africa, but we have quite limited knowledge about pre-colonial. And so we are here today to learn substantially about it. I would like to introduce us to a very distinguished scholar in our midst. His name is Dr. Beko from the Department of Africana Studies. He's a teaching associate professor at the Department of Africana Studies, and adjunct faculty member at the Department of Music and College of General Studies at the University of Pittsburgh. He earned his PhD degree in ethnomusicology at the University of Pittsburgh, a master's degree in philosophy of music at the University of Ghana, Legon, and a bachelor's degree in music education at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. He has a couple of book chapters, journal publications, for example, in the prestigious journal of International Journal of Cultural Poverty, Composition in Africa and Diaspora series. Also has a book publication titled Creative Processes in African Musical Cultures, Innovations with Tradition. His interests include reviving tradition, engaging modernity, style and aesthetics in Ghanaian, new Pentecostal, charismatic church musical practices, black performances, aesthetics, agency, resistance, and cultural politics of identity in the performance. He also teaches several courses at the University of Pittsburgh here, including Introduction to Africa, Early African Civilization, Cultures of Africa, African Liberation Movement, and has also designed 2 new courses entitled African Indigenous Knowledge and African Popular Theatre. So we have the very best person in the whole wide world to teach us about pre-colonial Africa. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Beko.
Thanks so much, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the graduate students. I began to have interactive with them. That idea came because they just visited me at office. We were just talking to them. Then we were just talking about looking at issues across Africa, and it just came to our mind. So I was there one day, and they called me and told me to represent So I find we have to simply agree on what they are planning to do because basically talk. But first of all, I would like to give a great thanks. I'm so happy that I see special people here, and I just want to simply mention and appreciate their attendance. First of all, is Dr. Hassan Sam. All right, next. Then I said Dr. Macrino. All right, let's also. Then I think I also want to welcome. He's like my brother. All right, Leonard. He's actually going to be nobody been with me for quite a long time, like a brother. We see ourselves more like a brother. So thank you for also coming. Right. And also I want to thank my students for also coming. Everyone, appreciate what you come so far. All right, so thank you. So we have pre-colonial African traditions. Okay, it's the exploration of African indigenous knowledge. Pre-colonial. Because that is where the knowledge actually comes from. And normally people interest, surprisingly, every culture has what we call indigenous knowledge. But the world looks like some people simply force some people to leave their indigenous knowledge and adapt their indigenous knowledge. That's simple. And some people quite a lot of because the moment you leave your worldview, your knowledge, and accept someone, become a slave until you return to traditional. Because the traditional indigenous knowledge is fundamental that every society has. That is the strength that we develop. But we don't leave it and go and take someone and want to develop. Throughout my experience at BIT, I have had contact with students, and especially Ghanaian graduate students, whose interest was to do some research in Africa in line with their specialization. But most of the time, their research is based solely on post-colonial issues, which are political, economical, social, cultural. Anything before post-colonial was not so much part of their interest. And if they should even decide to go a little bit back to history, they only move into colonial. That becomes the agenda. That's where they could go. So for instance, those who are doing something like political science or anything, they are dealing with modern trend of political system. Their modern interest is not in chief. They don't put anything that would be beyond post-colonial. If it's come economy, they went straight and simply want to look at the problem Africans encounter in the economic system. They will not study anything about agriculture. It means that their interest in Africa is simply modern and the problem we are going through. And I remember one student, I meet a lot of students, and one student I mean who was interested to go to Ghana to do a graduate. It was a graduate student, and that was the department, economic department over here. And she contacted me and informed me about her interest to do research in Africa, so especially Ghana. However, when I agreed, I advised her to first start looking at the early stages of market system in the region during the pre-colonial, before the emergence of Makola markets is interesting. She was not ready. Because education is post-colonial. So you should not see pre-colonial related to post-colonial. Because that's the department that made us to think as if post-colonial is not associated. But what you see is post-colonial is all ranging from pre-colonial. Because we can't understand post-colonial to be understand the pre-colonial. But it rolls up to that side. So, theoretical framework. The term post-colonial, which seems to construct with the term pre-colonial, is a geopolitical term that relates with all the ambiguity and complexity of the many differences cultural experience it implicates. Its relative term, post-colonialism, emerged as a field in the 1960s and has now become this academic study of the cultural, political, and economic consequences of colonial and imperialism, focusing on the impact of human control of exploitation and colonized people in their lands. The term was adapted by scholars to characterize concerned fields ranging across so many disciplines. It now provides a methodology for a wide range of disciplines because it has acknowledged the very specific forms of colonial and colonial power operating in the present But the question is, to what extent do post-colonial studies provide us with the total knowledge about Africa? Because as Webner and Reiner claim, most of the theoretical argument in post-colonial studies is forcefully driven by diasporic intellectuals whose aspiration comes more and more from nicely subtle readings of fashionable European theorists like Foucault, Derrida, and Barton than from the current local knowledge of the people in Africa. In other words, much of the critical theories seem to be drawn strongly from Western ideological traditions rather than the African local indigenous knowledge. That is why some African scholars are not whether to continue applying Marxist theory to African situation when Marx himself had been running Africa. This may be the reason why, despite political independence, Africa and its people, as many scholars have agreed, have gained no real freedom at all from such imperial people, and are continuing to battle with those dominant ideology imposed on them. In fact, the ever more perceived is the late capitalist domination by Western metropolitan powers, including transnational corporations and global agencies, which are metropolitan based. Where still, many African countries, as or rather actually claim, appear to be state in name only, as their sovereignty is virtually political fiction. First, their minimal control over economic flows across their own nation boundaries. Second is their lapses and deviation of public security into public violence, political violence, sorry. Third is their retreat in practice from the populist promises of the early national proud to independence. Fourth is their international withdrawal indirectly from global public welfare institutions. All these complex realities found across many African countries, which sometimes includes African debt crisis itself, is increasing economic dependency, is kleptocracy in collusion, extractive transnationals invite the subversive formation of neo-colonialism. Here, the temptation is to fall back on dependency theory, on the sociology of underdevelopment as the key to contemporary marginalized Africa. How do we expect Africa only to be known through these colonial lenses? That's the reason why Du Bois, who in his life saw it very important to bring the learning of Africa into the center of education. In 1946, he published a book entitled The World and Africa, an inquiry into the parts which Africa has played in world history. He was recasting an earlier book he published in that is 1939, with the aim of re-emphasizing the importance of African history. He saw it an opportunity for Africans to redefine their place in the world. He was encouraging us to provide broader aspect of African history that brings the pre-colonial era and indigenous knowledge into the center of learning. And the second person, Peter Graham, also in his book entitled Beyond Eurocentrism, a new view of modern history, or that world history, published in 1996. He goes further in drawing our attention to how we can find a cultural or that specific paradigm in dealing with the issues of Africa with different cultures. To him, the field of studying different cultures, especially non-Western cultural Africa, needs by its own reckonings to get beyond Eurocentrism and beyond the narrow study of elites to which it originated, and make the cultural specific paradigm relevant to what is intended to study. One thing that these two scholars and some other scholars share is that they see how the modern system of education, which is critical theory, limits scholars' interest in acquiring local knowledge. The modern system becomes obstacle to attempt to negate the very existence of the indigenous knowledge, and if possible, even destroy the reality that the local knowledge attempt to represent. There is the need, therefore, to look into this indigenous knowledge and make it possible. And three terms come very important. They relate, but they are different. Pre-colonial, traditional, indigenous. The term pre-colonial is generally used to describe societies, cultures, and economies that existed prior to European colonization in various regions around the world, and especially in Africa. It is also used by scholars to highlight the complexity of indigenous society living before colonial influence. In short, the term refers to a period and condition existing before the establishment of colonial rule. Although the first record of the term is late 19th century, particularly in discussion about the history and cultures of colonized societies. However, the term is believed to have gained prominence rather in the late 20th century, as scholars began to focus on indigenous history and perspectives that were often overlooked in colonial narratives. The term tradition is used to describe doctrine, belief, and customs that have been handed down from generation to generation. But most scholars in applying the term think that tradition itself simply invokes vision of old. Therefore, in applying the concept to non-Western societies, their tendency is to implant the idea of static. That is a tradition that is timeless, and it's kind of exotic type, underpinned by local, natural, or pre-modern cultural flows, which has never changed. This view, however, according to Marian, is not an accurate one at all, particularly as applied to Africa, where it's a content of rapid changes which reach deeply into many aspects of the people's life. The term indigenous has also been associated from Western perspective with the primitive, the white, and the natural. Such representations have evoked some attitudes from most Western observers who limit their appreciation for the insight of their understanding of what indigeneity actually means. But for the millions of indigenous people in Africa, and also even in non-Western cultures, indigenous knowledge of what we call the native ways of doing is a very rationalization that rewards the individuals who live in that locality. It is a knowledge that reflects that is, we say, the dynamic a way in which the individual people have come to understand the world in relation to their natural environment, and also the way they organize that food knowledge of flora and fauna, cultural beliefs, and customs to enhance their lives. My aim, therefore, is to first examine the nature of the pre-colonial indigenous knowledge system. Two, to analyze the social, religious, cultural, political factors that surround the indigenous tradition. Then, third, conclude with some few questions on how we can apply the knowledge in our own future research and teaching. But before doing that, however, I will first provide a brief historical framework to help us understand the nature of the societies we want to talk about, their emergence, their settlement, the continent, houses, and also to know more about how they settle. Africa is the origin of modern humans within the past 300,000 years. It is a continent where different circumstances produce different societies, different traditions, customs, politics, and with different kingdoms and empires that arose and fell as they come the century past. It is a home to more than 1 billion people with over 800 million linguistic groups, speaking one or more of about 3,000 dialects, estimated to be nearly 1/3 of the world's tongue. Africa is therefore considered to have high levels of genetic, cultural, and linguistic diversity and extensive population structure. Language is thus one marker of its identity. And some closely related, but most are not related and are distinguished by their own grammatic structure. But before looking at this, I'm going to continue to give you a background, a little bit of historical condition, the people will move on. Early human, Homo sapiens, are said to have appeared in Africa continent during the Pleistocene period. But the actual human societal evolution took place in the Holocene period, during which the last Homo sapiens sapiens, Homo sapiens sapiens, become fully differentiated as a species. The emergence and the growth of modern human in the continent can therefore be traced from Holocene period. It was a period when human society and intellectual development produced the first species capable of significantly and consciously altering geophysical processes, having a little bit control of the environment, and therefore leading to the emergence of the first linguistic groups in the continent. So the first linguistic group that emerged in Africa society, now you have over 800 ethnic groups. They all emerged from one of these. Even black across the whole world, because diaspora, every black come from one of society. 4 societies. Before it's expanded to 800, it's quite gradual. I'm not talking about history, I wish I could go to it. So there are Afro-Asiatic, Nilo-Sahara, Niger-Congo, Haitian. And this is why they are originated. It means that Afro-Asiatic, when you look at the top there, all right, Ethiopia, the first one on top, the Afro-Asiatic. Then the one around present-day Sudan, you have the Nilo-Sahara. They are going to spread. Then the one in present-day Tanzania, and the Haitian, the last one. Then you have the Niger-Congo, there are many people in present-day Mali, and they're found there, That's where the first 4 society, they are going to cover the whole Africa. By the time they cover, they have over 800. So let's look at, first of all, if you look at this, by 9,000 BC, some of these 4 groups have begun to move as a response to the environmental change, expanding gradually, first across the north, then they move across the south. So the first one, the north began 4 first. So when we look over here, we can see the ship right here. They are there to cover. It's only around Mauritania they will cover later. But those in the top bar are the Afro-Asiatic who are going to cover those countries, Algeria and so on. Those in the center are the Sahara. Then you have the Niger-Congo and West Africa. They are going to now cover the rest of West Africa. Some are going to penetrate and move to East Africa. So when you look at these people now, the south, look at the south. This is where they began to penetrate. But the Bantus are going to continue. Here they began to cover South Africa. It takes so many hundreds of years before South Africa was covered finally by the Bantus. So it was this northern or southern zone expansion that led to the emergence of sub-Saharan. But as it really spread, so surprising, when the Afro-Asiatic moved, 6 sub-ethnic groups emerged right away. The ancient Egyptians moved to Egypt. The Berber people are going to cover Algeria, Morocco, cover all Libya. Then you have the Chadi, the Hausa people come from Chadi. They are going to send some going to come to northern Nigeria. Then also you have the South people. They also have 10 emerge. We don't have time to go through, but it's quite interesting. And this Eastern Sudan, they cover greater part of Kenya. They are going to expand to cover broader. Then when you go there, you also have the Niger-Congo. The Niger-Congo people are those in West Africa. So you have the Mandi, all right, the Mandi people, you have Mali, and they cover all those Guinea. You have the South Sudan. So they also need to, but the Bantu people, the Bantus are going to, the Yoruba Igbo are these people. But the Bantu are going to spread, they are going to cover the rest of Africa. All right, then you have the Christians, who were those. So now finally, we assume that they are in Africa now. So all the blue, their color, top there is Afro-Asiatic. We'll cover all those countries. Then the yellow color is that is Nilo-Saharan people. Then you have the red and also the orange color is both the same group of people, all right? Afro-Asiatic, Niger-Congo. Then the green color down there, because they were in Ethiopia, but these people forced them into present day Namibia and so on. So let's move on and talk about that. So by 1000 CE, further improvement had occurred that actually drive throughout the continent. That's leading to 2 major developments that emerged. First one, expansion of these societies into over 3,000 subgroups after final settlement. And second, actually was the subsequent reorganization of these societies into 2 major types, political, where some became centralized, some became decentralized. So let's briefly look at the centralized, decentralized. Some became centralized. And those who actually became centralized pre-colonial, present day, they are still in nature of centralized, okay? But they have kings. Those who decentralized don't have kings and chiefs. So roughly, what attitude I want to look at a little bit of this area. So when we come to the centralized societies, those countries, the centralized societies were some of those earlier decentralized societies who later became centralized because of some factors. Because in the northeast, or around northeast, you have the kingdom of Egypt. It was built from the benefits that they gained from the fertile land of the river, because there's certain profit, something they gained that helped them to build. When you come to the west, where you have ancient Ghana and Mali in the west, they were built on profit gained by the trans-Saharan trade. And while those in the forest, like Ashanti Kingdom and Benin Kingdom, were founded on gold, all right? Always there's certain factor. Without those factors, you can't be states, all right? Then when we move straight to the east, especially around the Great Lakes in Eastern Africa, provided much support for establishment. For instance, you have the Buganda, Bunyoro Kingdom that empowered. Then in other states like Zimbabwe Kingdom, also because of gold that they have. All right, when it comes to Zulu Kingdom in South Africa, it was also built around monarchical authority, religious affiliation, and other military expertise. So it depends on certain factors that actually help them. So now when we move straight, we have some of these kingdoms, they all happen at a certain time, all right? So they all didn't happen at the same time. So when you have different, these are examples to see a lot of countries that, a lot of states that emerge. So let's move on right then. Let's look at this. Now, the following are some character features found among these centralized societies. One, most of the time, all those societies, they are run by monarch or rulers. So all this present, they will see any society in Africa that have chiefs, private chiefs, they were centralized. Those who don't have, they were not. All right. We want to look at how pre-colonial is in the present. I want to give you an idea of the history. So, and one other characteristic feature is that authority was vested in the hands of the elite few. All few had commands. All right. There's no agreement of voting, per se, or who decide the laws. Taxes and tributes are collected regularly. Then the control of trade and wealth enables them to also sustain leadership groups and support their government as well. And also one fundamental thing is that they were built a lot of pyramids. Very good. So if I give an example, this was, and quite surprising, we talk about pre-colonial. This was built on pre-colonial. Those times they were architectural in the pre-colonial before Africa was colonized. So if they were this somewhere when they built, it stayed for so many years, hundreds, 200 years, it doesn't fall. So when it comes to modernity, they've stopped this time and rather adjusting to things that simply it rains and they fall. It left this indigenous knowledge, architecture. This one is in Egypt, kingdoms and power. Then we move on to West Africa. This were library. Timbuktu, library. People were traveling all across to do research. Were traveling across Europe to do research. The library. Knowledge has already opened up when people are proud of that. Let's move on. So examples of these central societies who still live today, there are a lot of them, I can't mention all. And all these group of people, they have chiefs, chief. They have Ashanti, Yoruba people have chiefs. All these people, they will have chiefs, meaning that they were centralized. Those who don't have chiefs, they are not centralized. So they brought it, don't know how they have even maintained some of our examples of them. Let's move on. Now, stateless societies were those who could not rise to the centralized level. And the main factors that hindered them from this and made them remain stateless throughout are found. They are low population density. Because with lower population, you can't become a state when the population does not go to a certain extent. And also they are productive of relatively small economic circles. Because the economic structure, when you expand the economy, you can grow. So state formation is not just for any level coming up. So these are factors. Also, their method of breaking into a group system, where power was dispersed throughout the entire community. Power does not belong to one person. You can't be a state. All right. Distribute everything equally, that kind of stuff. Okay. Then also the limited choice of elderly leaders when elders become leaders. All right. However, this decentralized society did not lack political organization as they continue to adapt and develop some form of political system that fit their tradition as well as their environment in which they live. For instance, some of them accepted some kind of rules of federation as a way of providing security or for many demands of their community. In other words, for protecting small villages, they will join together as a community, all right? Even though they are not together, like for political protection, security for the people. And when you have example, all these ethnic groups, you can find them in, now that they are all, you have, or Arusha, Tanzania, you can find them, you have Dandinga, Dongo, or the present day they are living, they don't have chief, all right? Because they were decentralized. But it's very important to move on to see, okay? So far, I just want to now look at retention. We want to talk of today. What are they retained today? What are the indigenous knowledge they have brought into them? Because we assume that when they were colonized, we assume that they lost everything. No, it doesn't exist that way. They brought something in and they still maintain it. All right. And people assume that they were westernized. No, the fact is that they simply select what fit them, all right, and to apply that knowledge. So I want to look at some examples, but there are so many other things, but I'll just pick on this three. We are looking at political traditions, all right, that is still there. We are looking at trade and commerce, that's still there. We are looking at religion and culture. That were brought from pre-colonial. It means that they've not lost the pre-colonial, all right, they've not lost, it's still there, it's hidden. That's why we researchers and scholars, we have to settle them and bring them up. Let's talk about politics. Most societies in present-day Africa still maintain their traditional method of political organization, which can be found among those who were centralized and decentralized. And Olawale Alien actually explained this further. Let me quote. The difference between the centralized and decentralized society's political organization is due to the dominance of an administrative and judicial apparatus in one type of social organization and its absence in the other. Now we want to go through and look at the traditional form of government, do comparative statement look at between the central and the decentralized, or a traditional form of government. First, among the centralized societies, like the present-day Uganda, Yoruba societies, there are hierarchical forms of period with the chief and paramount chief they have in there. So they still maintain that thing over there. Whereas the decentralized societies like Dinka, Maasai, and so on, they don't have any, they are equal. All right, they are just there. And I want to share a little picture. This was just the picture. This Benue Kingdom. All right, and this tradition is still there. It was old, but it's been broken. If you go to the present day, you see children, they bow, they are all. It's still there. Colonization should not destroy that. That's what we need to re-emphasize and bring it back. Colonization should not destroy that. They are still there. And one picture, this one is Oyo. I just love it. Oyo, Yoruba, Oyo Kingdom was very powerful over there, and it's still there. And they still go the same what was pre-colonial. That's the way festivals they do the same thing. When you go Ashanti King in Ghana, Ashanti Kingdom. So second, the difference between the centralized society. In the centralized societies, like the present-day Ashanti, Hausa, and Shona societies, there is incidence of organized force, which is the principal sanction in a society based upon cultural and economic heterogeneity, corresponding to distinct of wealth, privilege, and status. Whereas in the centralized society, like the present-day Fulani, Igbo, and Somali communities, there is notable absence of this future. When we come to, that is the third one, in the centralized society, like the present-day Ashanti, Member, and Yoruba, political rights and obligations are territorial limited, or acquired in the decentralized society, like the present-day Brabo and Tabasan society. The territorial units are local communities based on the size of the unit types and people on the street. Let me give you an example. Because these people are used to that kingdom. When you go to Ghana, Ashanti Kingdom, there's a mark. You enter, you know, right? They make a mark, direction. But those in December, like they live in the village, they don't know where they are living in. It's just that the houses are not there, that's all. You know what I mean? But these people, they still bring that so strong. So when you enter to Ashanti village, they make a mark because they were kingdoms. So presently, they still bring that concept of map around them to know where you have to enter this town. The villages, they don't know where to their land. Start from the home. Let's move on. Then four, the decentralized society like the present day Mambrusi, Kikuyu, and Maasai society, the only step in the direction of an organized judicial system is based on seniority, all right, which is the recognition of certain elderly people as traditional entitled to participate in education and dispute in society. So this is the basic, everybody see the elders. Now, so let's move on to the second trade and commerce tradition that I brought. The structural form of marketing and trading that we find today among most societies were drawn from the early traditional way of marketing and trade during the pre-colonial era. Therefore, the two types of pre-colonial trading system that African traders inherited and do apply them in the present day market are this internal and external system. Several books and articles have therefore been published to prove the traditional method of marketing and trading still exist in African communities. And while some of the articles concentrate on local market system, some rather do more regional. And there are some articles, examples of those articles, these are examples of those articles who concentrate on, write a lot of articles about present. They want to defend and prove that the market system, the pre-colonial market system is still working today. And some of the articles prove one article, that is African trade in Central or Sierra Leone. Then one is traditional market economy in South Economy. Then the other one is Zambia on market and commerce. Then you also have markets for stable food in Kampala, Uganda. Then those who actually want to write more on regional basis, in a sense that one is market, that is, he said, let me read it. Exchange of and marketing among the Hausa. Because the Hausa people are not